Chapter 1, Mishnah 1, the Torah in Vayikra, chapter 5, verses 15 through 16, requires a person who unintentionally derives at least one perut worth of benefit from a sanctified item to bring a korban known as an ashlam me'ilos, and to repay the amount he benefited plus an additional fifth. When discussing these laws, known as the laws of Me'ilah, the verse 15, refers to the misuse of the holies of Hashem. This is expounded by Torah's Kohanim as teaching that Me'ilah applies only to holies that are designated exclusively for Hashem. Now, as explained in the general introduction, korbanos are divided into two groups: Kodshei Kodashim, most holy offerings, and Kodashim Kelim, offerings of lesser holiness. When a person consecrates an animal as Kodshei Kodashim, e.g. as a chatas or asham, it is in the category of holies designated exclusively for Hashem. Thus, it is then subject to Me'ilah. However, when Zerika, throwing the blood on the Mizbeach, the final Avodah service of the blood, of such Kodshei Kodashim is performed, and the meat becomes permitted for the Kohanim to eat, the meat is no longer designated exclusively for Hashem. Therefore, it is no longer subject to Me'ilah. Now, Kodshei Kodashim must be slaughtered and have their blood received, Kabbalah, in a Kli Sheres, service vessel, in the northern section of the courtyard of the Beis Hamikdash, see Zevachim, chapter 5, Mishnah 1. If these avodos were done in the south, the korban is disqualified and does not become permitted. Thus, it remains exclusively for Hashem. The Mishnah begins by addressing the law in such cases. We now turn to the words of the Mishnah. Regarding korbanos of Kodshei Kodashim, that one slaughtered in the south of the temple courtyard and are thus disqualified, the law is that they are subject to the laws of Me'ilah. That is, if someone benefits from them, he is liable for Me'ilah. In which case does this law apply? If someone slaughtered them, i.e. Kodshei Kodashim, in the south, and then received their blood in the north, or if he slaughtered them in the north and then received their blood in the south, they remain subject to Me'ilah, even though the korbanos are disqualified. In order for the meat to be permitted to the Kohanim, and, as a result, no longer be subject to Me'ilah, both Shechita and Kabbalah must be done in the north. Similarly, if he slaughtered them by day as required and threw their blood on the Mizbeach at night, which invalidates the korban, and certainly if he slaughtered them at night, which invalidates the korban, and threw their blood on the Mizbeach by day, i.e. the next day, or if he slaughtered them with the intent where they must be eaten, which invalidates the korban. In all these cases, they are subject to the laws of Me'ilah. The Mishnah teaches a general rule regarding this law. Rabbi Yeshua stated the general rule: any meat of Kodshei Kodashim that had a time when it was permitted for the Kohanim to eat is not subject to the laws of Me'ilah, even if the korban later became disqualified for some other reason. That is, if Zerika, as well as the previous avodos, was performed properly, thus permitting the korban to the Kohanim, the korban is not subject to the laws of Me'ilah, even if the korban later became disqualified to be eaten by the Kohanim. For once it becomes permitted to the Kohanim, it is no longer the holies of Hashem, and it never becomes subject to Me'ilah again. On the other hand, any meat of Kodshei Kodashim that did not have a time when it was permitted to the Kohanim before becoming disqualified is still subject to the laws of Me'ilah. The Mishnah discusses this rule: which meat of korbanos had a time when it was permitted for the Kohanim, and as a result is not subject to Me'ilah, even though it became prohibited meat of Kodshei Kodashim, which, after being permitted for the Kohanim to eat, was left over past its time, or meat of Kodshei Kodashim that became Tameh, or meat of Kodshei Kodashim that left the courtyard. These three disqualifications caused the meat to be prohibited to Kohanim. Nevertheless, the meat is not subject to the laws of Me'ilah because at one point it was permitted to the Kohanim. Once it is permitted to the Kohanim, it is no longer in the category of holies of Hashem, and is forever removed from the laws of Me'ilah. And which meat of korbanos did not have a time when it was permitted for the Kohanim, and is thus subject to Me'ilah, it is the meat of Kodshei Kodashim offering, that was slaughtered with the intent to eat it after its designated time, or to eat it outside its place, or the meat of a korban that people who are disqualified to do the avodah in the Beis Hamikdash received, or threw the blood of the korban on the Mizbeach. That is, it does not matter whether disqualified people received its blood and qualified people threw its blood on the Mizbeach, or if qualified people received its blood and disqualified people threw its blood on the Mizbeach. In either case, and certainly if both avodos were done by disqualified people, the korban is disqualified. Therefore, Zerika does not permit the meat of the korban for the Kohanim, and since it was never permitted for the Kohanim to eat, it remains subject to the Me'ilah prohibition.